There he is.
How are you,
Good
Sam?
morning or afternoon.
Good morning or afternoon for you. Hey, your election is completed. So,
Yes,
yeah, it's a
and
changing of the guard.
he's the guard. Well, he was appointed prime minister. It's funny. I
Yeah.
did a sketch of Mark Carney about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I did a portrait.
Oh, you did. Okay. Interesting. Ah,
Very cool. Well, let's so we're recording. We're going. Welcome, Elaine. This is Elaine Pandolfi's joining us today, and of course, Todo-san is joining us from Japan, back
uh,
home again in Japan.
yep.
So, um, we and you weren't here yesterday, Elaine. So we're going to start with a kind of a little bit of a recap from yesterday, and then we're going to get right into the content for today. And we promise. Sam and Armin, we promise today that it's less talking from us today. It's like way less talking from us and fewer
Good.
slides. As you can see on the side, I don't even bother to cloak the slides. It's kind of like when they come up, you'll see on the slide of the deck how it works. We're very low tech dudes. Um, so today, yesterday we ended. One of the things that we were talking about was as we left kind of the homework assignment was the I am statement, that sheet. And a matter of fact, I'll put the sheet into the chat, Elaine, here in a moment so that you've got it that I'm referring to. And just wanted to hear Sam or I'm kind of your experience with it and your thoughts as you're working through kind of the I am statement and where you landed with it. Just take a couple of minutes. So Sam, you're on the hook.
There we go. Sorry. Okay.
There you go.
Oh,
That's it.
so I'm on the hook. Um, I I answered that. I did a lot of reflection when I started my company on what I wanted to do, and because I came from an engineering background and
Mhm.
transitioned into what I thought was reflective of who I am, getting in a creative field. I answered that in I am a creative person that is expressing himself. So I can't remember the exact wording that I used. I was just trying to find it, but that is I am a person who wants to express themselves creatively. And I'm going to find my exact wording there. Sorry, I came a little bit unprepared, but uh, and I did reflect on that quite a bit in the past couple of years, given my personal circumstances. While I've been going through some challenging times, so I've had a lot of um, transformation.
Sure.
Hmm.
Sure.
You know, yeah, as you struggle to, or as you search for the words, the exact words there, one of the things that's I have found, very useful, particularly, when we're looking at the formation of vision or the definition of a vision for an organization. It's less important what the actual words are and more important what they make possible. So this question of the I am, however I answer it, because it is actually, just something that and I'm gonna, don't minimize it by saying this. It's something I literally make up. So I pay attention to the resonance. Where does that land for me? Yeah. Is there, what kind of integrity is created there, between this thing that we call spirit and my expression of that spirit through, my body. Uh, what does it make possible? However I land on whatever the words are, what does it make possible? So, there's kind of that embedded question that is associated with the way that we answer I am.
So just to so one of the reasons I did start the business that I'm in is when I was when I wanted to go into a creative field. My parents, of course, I was very young at the time, suggested, hey, let be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and and that was a barrier. So I thought, why I can create a world where creativity is valued,
Mhm.
and 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 I can be part of creating that, taking what I've learned in my profession over the years. So the actual words I used is to share a vision where creativity is valued and becomes a lucrative source of enumeration for all creatives alike. That was the wording that I used.
I like that.
Cool. That's good.
Good.
That's good. I think one thing too, I don't want to lose track that you said, Sam, I think that's important is we, especially when you're going through periods of transition, kind of as to use your words and transformation, right? As you're going through that, is those are opportunities to kind of step back and kind of reevaluate that I am, what does that mean that I am and what are my, what's my inspiration, motivation, values, I am kind of that chain. And we have a tendency sometimes to wait until we're in a transformative state to do that. So one thing and I found myself doing it this morning over a cup of coffee at about 5:30 is to stop with my journal and go, hey, wait a minute, let me rethink this a little bit. If I'm teaching this week, I need to am I in alignment? And my I am shifted a little bit because where I was when I originally started it to where I am today is a little different. So the fact that you mentioned kind of as you're going through it, you're iterating kind of as you go and kind of focusing on those things. That's a very cool thing because Blaine said it yesterday in passing, what got us here won't get us there tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I don't know. I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing now had I tried to start this back then. It's
Boy.
almost like
Oh,
life
good
was
point.
telling me, "Hey, you need to go through this. You need to learn this stuff. You need to do this," and that's going to empower you to do what you're doing now.
Sure.
Yeah.
That
Good.
Yeah, there's a gestational process or just timeline.
Just
Yeah, and
stating.
Armand, you can probably appreciate this. Nature's probably the greatest teacher I've ever come across. When I look at how nature actually functions, there is so many lessons in there about how we as humans actually can construct our lives, but also construct our organizations. And paying attention to that, I think, makes a big difference in terms of how we actually experience this thing that we call life. Yeah. Is it, is there nature in it? Yeah. Yeah. So to
Yeah.
speak. So, yeah, I just put
Yeah.
something in the chat here. I came across a recent, actually, it was a combination of Harvard Gallup study. Only 20% of adults feel as if they have a clear sense of purpose that gives meaning to their lives. So when we're talking about how
Yeah.
you lead, this question of meaning becomes absolutely critical to making it to effectively moving people. And I use the word effective here, minimal unintended consequences. I can move people if I got a big stick or a big pot of money, but then I've got hell to pay oftentimes after the fact. I got to go back and clean up after myself. But if we can land in this meaning area, yeah, that's where we really start to get some leverage, yeah, as leaders.
Yeah.
Blaine, I don't know how much time we're going to devote to each individual, but I don't know if this is my final destination, but you know, I was raised my parents lived through the war. They could have been my grandparents. So I really came from, efficiency, scarcity. My background's engineering, so you have to do everything, diligently. It's all about operations and cut to the next decimal. And I've learned in the last couple of years that, energy, spirituality are drivers of everything. And I don't really understand, but I'm coming to an understanding where, yes, there are physical laws of nature, but there's something deeper that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's to be discovered.
Yeah, that's one of
That's
the
what,
grounding foundational arguments that I make in the book Compassionate Capitalism. Yeah, everything is connected. Yeah, everything is connected. Yeah, and we talk about spirit not as a religious conversation, but as an energetic conversation. Everything is energy. Everything is moving. Everything is moving all the time, and it's all moving through an interconnected relational dynamic. Everything is in relationship, to everything else in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, nothing is operating in isolation.
We're
So,
moving.
yeah,
Every molecule is
every
constantly moving.
molecule
Everything moves.
that tickles. Ugh.
Even when it doesn't look like it's moving, everything moves.
Yeah.
So, on that note, so it's interesting, Sam, you mentioned that because I think one of the things a lot of folks refer to it as woo-woo, or sometimes gets referred to as Bob Proctor would call it woo-woo.
Woo
Uh,
woo. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
woo-woo.
Well, yeah, we're on the West Coast, so we get away with this stuff.
Yeah, we can exactly. Um, I want to, so today what we're gonna be focusing on today, and before I share slides, is we're gonna be talking about dimensions of leadership. And you're gonna actually take a test today.
Hmm.
Yes. So we're gonna have a PDF that I'll give you here in a little while that we'll talk about it. But we're want to start with, and I'm gonna share slides. There are slides, Elaine. Um, as we're heading into this, I want to share kind of the concept around defining leadership. Let's go back. We're going to visit this every day. We're going to
Every day.
revisit defining leadership and for the sake of what every day. Because to your point, Sam, and I'm into the conversations that we've had, this definition will apply every day to the pieces, and we'll start to unpack the bits and pieces of this statement. I'm going to share that deck. So you see that? Everybody see that? Okay. Elaine, can you see that? Okay. All right, cool. So Blaine, you want to start this, and
Yeah.
then I'll add
The
some
idea,
additional
yeah,
thoughts to this.
yeah. Influencing others to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. Basically, this is the working definition. This is what I and Dolan as well. When we're coaching our clients, when we're working in the mastermind program that we'll talk about on Friday, this is the
Right.
framework for everything that gets done. Influencing takes command and control out of the conversation. It's, how am I creating meaning just by how I show up, the state of being? And we'll talk about it in the context of leadership presence. Yeah. One way to think about this is when you observe a boat moving through water, yeah,
Uh,
on the front end of the boat, you'll see a little bow wake that gets generated as it moves through the water. And that bow wake is actually an indication of how much resistance is being created as the boat moves through the water. The cleaner the boat's structure is, the smaller the bow wake. Now, where this gets to be interesting from a leadership conversation perspective and an influencing conversation is every single one of us has a bow wake. When we enter into a system, whether it's our family or our organization, our community, whatever, that system, think of it as the water that that we're navigating through. We have a bow wake, and people respond to that bow wake. Leaders cause movement. Most leaders are not consciously aware of the bow wake that precedes their entrance into their organization. And as a consequence, they end up dealing with some of the consequences of that bow wake before they ever have a chance to actually start communicating what it is that they want to have happen. People are, kind of adjusting themselves to that bow wake. So part of what we look at here from an influencing perspective is what's too much, what's too little. If it's too small, people don't notice. If it's too large, people are running to the wood piles to protect themselves. So I want to be able to have kind of a rheostatic control, and that begins with awareness. What's too much? What's too little? What's the situation or the environment asking of me at this point in time? That's where influencing comes into play. The co-creation, putting people in a state of receptivity so that the idea that you're running with can transfer to them and they can begin to own it themselves. And this is where meaning starts to be really an integral part of this process. Co-creating, there's meaning that's embedded in that process. It's meaningful to me, and this is for the for the sake of what starts to raise its head up here a little bit here. So I'm
mhm.
co-creating with others. which is really interesting here. And when we'll get into this much deeper, both in the mastermind program, but also on Thursday when we start looking at communication. That co-creation dynamic, what we're looking at producing is not consensus in terms of, you go around the table, we've got consensus. Yeah, everybody says it's a good idea. I don't want consensus necessarily. I
Right.
want commitment. I want commitment. Command and control will typically generate compliance. And if I'm moving too fast, bow wake's too heavy, I end up going, was this a good idea? People go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you've got the position power. I'm listening to you. So it's a good idea. That's called consensus. And I still don't have commitment. I want commitment because that's where I can go to the bank. And then coordinated movement piece, again, leaders move us into territory we've never been before, particularly if it's a new initiative or a new goal or objective that we've never really worked with before. So because it's new territory, guaranteed we're going to step on each other's toes. We can't not step on each other's toes. That's just part and parcel of the way that this works. So how do we agree to disagree? How do we agree to continue doing this dance if somebody's got a stub toe? Yeah, yeah. Literally becomes, we start looking for speed bumps. Think of it as a speed bump. Okay, just an indication that it's time to talk. It's time to have a conversation. It doesn't indicate that anything is broken. So, there's a mindset around that, how I actually deal with conflict. And I mentioned this yesterday, conflict is illuminating. It also creates enough heat oftentimes that it can, move aside things that aren't necessary any longer. And then the final piece of this has to do with pursuit of a worthy ideal. Yeah, this is, where the for the sake of what, the meaning starts to come into play. A worthy ideal, by definition, is something that is worthy of me expending my life's energy in producing it. That's what a worthy ideal comes down to. So is it, a 10% increase in revenue may be really interesting for the shareholders of an organization. But again, when we'll, this poor forklift operator that we talk about, moving pallets from point A to point B, a 10% increase in the organization's revenue is not going to make one bit of difference to this person's life.
Yeah.
It really isn't. And that's not a worthy ideal. It's not going to get him out of bed in the morning. It's not going to light his eyes up. Yeah. Certainly creativity and innovation are not going to be tapped into. It's kind of still moving forklift, pallets from A to B, point A to P. So all of this stuff kind of comes into this definition. So we work with this definition because it's actually got only these five pieces to it: influencing, co-creation, coordinated movement, worthy ideal. As I said, four pieces here.
So one thing I would suggest is so when we look at this sentence, right, and we think about it, and it's when you think about the definition, it's like, so, okay, so now what do you do with it?
Yeah.
And when you are as a leader, right, there's things that we do, right? We do manage and lead. Do is the act of us, the work that we've got to do. Manage is resourcing. Managing is seeing an outcome occur. Leading is or we define leading in these steps, but when as you're stepping into those conversations, it's an opportunity then for you to take this sentence and actually take this one sentence and break it down into its. So ask yourself, what am I seeking to influence? And have an intention going into the conversation. What is it that I'm seeking to influence? Who are the others? Because others is up, down, left, right, or left, right. I got it backwards. This happens at my age all the time. Um, Lucky I can find my way home sometimes. And then what's required to co-create this coordinated movement? And remember, when you are co-creating is how am I delivering that message? Coordinated movement is what does that look like? That is that release of command and control. That is I'm seeking ideas. I'm asking opinions. What things have we not thought of? What am I not seeing? What would you suggest? What are your experiences? And then the worthy ideal, Blaine talked about the worthy ideal. We have a slide on that, but I think we've covered that kind of at depth. But
Yeah.
the worthy ideal. And if you think about that to structure that conversation, not just the definition, but leverage the definition into an approach, then it empowers you to kind of go into it, and it creates a consistency in which those conversations occur, which in turn builds trust,
Yep.
which is pivotal. And speaking of trust, we've talked to, I
Just
for
go ahead. Yeah.
the slide
Talk about
exists, I must show it. It's a law. If the slide exists, you have to show it. But let's go into this one.
yeah. So the models that we're working with, and again, we're going to show this slide every day. We're not going to go into a whole lot of depth every day on it, but just to kind of reinforce, this is where we work. Leaders work in a universe. They work within a systemic structure that has basics parts to it. Vision, strategy, tactics. That's the why, the what, and the how. But
Uh-huh.
the piece that really informs and actually is where the rubber meets the road is in the mindset and spirit. Mindset has to do with belief systems. It has to do with value structures. It has to do with a lot of things that reside in our unconscious, subconscious. Yeah, out of sight, out of mind. 95% of our behavior is generated out of this mindset stew that lives in the background for us. So what we want to be doing as leaders is becoming more and more aware of what's in that mindset stew that is either something that we can leverage more effectively or something that we aren't aware of that continuously trips us up. And this is true both for individuals, but it's also true for organizations. Organizations have mindsets. Yeah, they do. And it's called culture. But a lot of culture is the things that are in the culture in the organization are in the background. Yeah, and in the background of the obvious. We call it the boo. Yeah, BOO, the background of obvious. It's the stuff that'll come out and bite you in the tail. It's kind of boo. It's kind of yeah. That way we're going one direction, now we're going another.
Damn it, Jim.
Yeah, exactly. So if we're working with mindset, what we begin to access is creativity and innovation. And the reason for that has to do because we start inviting people to play, with the notion of what if. Yeah, that what if questioning is a question of imagination. Yeah, it taps into the intentional, curated use of imagination, which drops us into and becomes a gateway, drops us into this life energy, this force, this creative force that we call spirit. What wants to be expressed through who we are as an organization, who we are as a team, what wants to be expressed. That starts to come through when we actually start playing with questions like, what if? What would this make possible? What do I get to have, do, or be if I really took the governor off and just let it kind of roll. That's where the leadership universe comes into play. The four pillars of empowerment are foundational components. These are actually the structural pieces that enable our exploration of mindset, in a very tangible way. And Dolan, yeah.
You did that was great. You did great. That was awesome. We've done this before.
I say this enough times, I'm going to get it right one of these times.
We don't know. So don't try this at home. We're pros. So the four pillars really are designed. So and Elaine, I told a little story yesterday about being CEO of a marketing company, and then laying in a methodology, and I blew up the culture. Basically, didn't blow the company up, blew up the culture. Oh, I see a thumb. There we go. Hang on. Blaine showed me this one yesterday. There we go. That's perfect. Okay.
That's the one.
Um, so the four pillars, and we're going to get into these in our exercise today, and in a supplemental document I'm going to give you kind of at the very end before everybody goes home, is trust and autonomy. Trust is that single player game where I have to trust me first, and by developing trust in myself, I engender the ability for me to trust you. You have to trust yourself, and that engenders that relationship between us that creates a trusted bond. And autonomy, the way I define autonomy is really simple. It's simply the willingness to try and the willingness to trust to let people try and know that their outcome may be different than the way you do it. Communication and transparency, again, is that is that pillar that comes off of trust and autonomy. That's our ability to be be very. Actually had a call a little while ago, and I said this in the call. This was an ism that Blaine and I talk about very frequently. When you don't communicate transparently, people will make up their own stories.
Yep.
They'll make up their own stories. And that was the case of the call that I was sitting in on, coaching these individuals. And then systems of accountability or growth and innovation is that willingness, is that focus on that worthy ideal. What are we doing to grow to that? And innovation is thinking differently. What are we not seeing? What could we do differently? And I promise to provide a video to everybody on innovation this week as a separate thing, perhaps in our LinkedIn private group. And systems of accountability is not Trello, not a project management chart. A system of accountability is our connection to each other and that commitment and the systems that bind those things together so that I agree that I'm accountable, you agree that I'm accountable, and we are able to move forward towards that outcome and in pursuit of our worthy ideal. And that's the structure of the four pillars. However,
Gonna get real granular today here.
yeah, this is going to take us into a bit of a conversation and an exercise. So,
Leaders cause movement. They cause movement by acting. Okay,
yes.
so we'll just kind of put that as the framework here. This acronym, ACCCT, when we're looking at influencing in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal, how do we go about doing that? What do we want to pay attention to? What's the way that we actually can uh, uh, have that come into have it be a natural way that we actually interact as leaders? So, Ryan, welcome. I see you. It's good to see
Yep.
you today. Good. This acronym stands for this: awareness. The A is awareness. The C is context. The other C is communication mastery.
Mhm.
The third C is commitment, and the final area here has to do with trust. These five areas are what we work with, in the mastermind program specifically. We'll
Yeah.
literally spend months on each one of these domains. These are domains of leadership that are linked back into that definition. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail here in the next slide on what each of these is. At least I believe we've got these in the next slide or not. Let me see.
Was that a
Oh,
smooth transition or what?
there we go. That's the one we wanted. Yes. So awareness, just to give you some high level thinking about this here. Awareness of what? Okay. Well, awareness of my mindset. What's in operation here? Yeah. And one of the ways that we begin to pay attention to that is we start asking you to pay attention to notice what you're noticing. Notice what you're noticing. Now, what do I mean by that?
Mm.
Something happens and I feel this little in my chest, or I feel my stomach tighten. Where did that come from? What was that about? Yeah. So I hear that somebody's coming in the room to meet with me. And I kind of get this, or I get this, that's kind of cool. I notice the sensations. My body is an incredible metric instrument that gives me access to all kinds of stuff that lives inside my body. And my mindset lives inside my body. So I start paying attention to the sensations. I want you to go do this. My hands start to get sweaty and I start feeling my heartbeat. Why am I feeling, is that excitement or is that fear? I start noticing and I start defining, I start paying attention to. The power of awareness is that it opens up visibility into different choices that I can make. And here's where this actually begins to bear fruit from a leadership perspective. And there's something, well, I won't go into the law, but it's called the law of requisite variety, if you're interested in it. But when you look at the way systems are organized, the element in the system that has the most choices available to it is going to be the element that dominates in that system. Now, why is this relevant? Well, as a leader, I introduce something into my organization. The system is going to push back because people like status quo. And I don't care if the business case makes perfect sense or not, there's a disruption to existing relationships that happens and people don't like it. Yeah. It's kind of like, well, this sucks, but I can see the value in it. If you as a leader have more resourceful ways of responding to that pushback, that inevitable pushback that comes when you introduce something into the system, you will ultimately be dominating in the context of moving things in the direction that you'd like it to move. Now, how you do that makes a big difference, which is where context and communication come into play. But the awareness piece sets you up to have more choices to be able to respond effectively to the inevitable pushback that comes whenever you introduce change into any organizational structure. Okay, whether it's a family, whether it's a government, whether it's a system, whatever it is, being able to be in a position to have a resourceful response as opposed to a reactive, knee-jerk, off-balance move, makes all the difference in the world. So we spend 3 months in this mastermind program that we're talking about. Here, we're only going to give you, the top level notion on this, but awareness is what we're looking at here. It is the foundation of everything. Context has to do with meaning generation. Okay. The story I like to tell, I mean, everybody, we all live in a home, we got an apartment, we've got a house, whatever it is. And these places that we live have different, rooms in them. And if you look in, your living room, you'll notice that it's got a specific set of furniture. There's probably a sofa, sitting chair, and maybe a coffee table, television set. I mean, it's got furniture that's appropriate for that room. You look at your kitchen, you look at that, and it's got different kinds of furniture. Your sofa does not live in your kitchen. It won't, make sense to have it there. You look at your bedroom, you've got a bed, you've got a set of drawers, perhaps on each side of the nightstands, and all that stuff. You wake up one day and you've got this brilliant idea. Yeah, you're all about efficiency. So you want to find ways to start your morning, just with just hit the road running. So you want to cut down the time it takes to get your morning coffee. Now, the way you're going to do that is you're going to move your bed into the kitchen, put it right next to the coffee pot. Now this is brilliant. You're going to save probably 5 minutes a day and aggregate it over the entire year. Look at the time saving. So you've got this business case made up in your mind about how brilliant this is. Everybody's away from home. You decide to take it on yourself to move the bed into the kitchen. Your spouse or your significant other or whoever it is that you're living with comes home at the end of the day and they walk in and they see a bed in the kitchen. And the very first thing out of their mind is, or out of their mouth is, what in the hell are you thinking? And you go, no, 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 let me tell you, this is so cool. Look how much time we're going to be saving. And they go, yeah, no, yeah, put it back. The bed does not belong in the kitchen. So that kind of a thing is what we're looking at here. Leaders will have these ideas about what they want to have happen, but they don't address the context. They don't redefine the contextual frame that this content, this new content, this change now is being positioned in. And people will look at it, they go, yeah, you're the boss, I understand. And then, they'll nod their heads, yes. Around the water cooler, they'll go, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We'll just wait until, he forgets about it or she forgets about it, and we'll go back to what we've always been doing.
Yeah.
This is how change usually gets, sabotaged in organizations. You have to be willing and, know how to address context. So that's what this comes into play. It informs our decision making. It enforces the choices that we see available. The teams, activities are all framed around context. Changing behavior oftentimes is what we're looking to do when we're moving organizations, and when we're looking to scale an organization, we need to have people performing differently. Trying to change somebody's behavior, if you've ever been married or if you've ever been in a long-term relationship, trying to change somebody's behavior is crazy. We've all tried it. Most of us have failed crazily about it. It just changing behavior is that's the focus, doesn't work well. However, if you can change the context, redefine the context. How I describe something in my mind generates the experience that I have about what it is, which generates my behavior. How I describe something determines how I feel about it. How I feel about it drives my behavior. If I want to change people's behavior and have it hold, I want to change how they're describing in their mind what this is about. Change that context. That's where the meaning is generated. All behavior makes sense when it's paired up against meaning. Yeah. People do not behave in ways that are not aligned to meaning that they're making up in their mind.
Yep.
So that's where context comes into play here. Communication mastery, simply, it's about how you go about doing all of that. Okay. And yeah, you know, I won't go on a big thread around this, but it's a fascinating area to play with. Um, a real simple version on this. We communicate with people for very different reasons. Relationship, socializing, exchanging information, problem solving. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that people communicate with one another. You take all of those reasons and you put them in one bucket, and that bucket is called results. We communicate with other people in order to produce a specific result. Leadership is the activity of influencing others in order to, co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal, to produce a result. To produce a result. Communication and leadership are exactly the same thing. My effectiveness as being, as a leader will fundamentally come down to how effective I am at communicating. And it's not just the words I'm using, the blah, blah, blah. It's the state of being, right? Yeah, all of this stuff comes into play here. So when we're looking at this communication mastery piece, we're not looking at word crafting. We're looking at at meaning generation, meaning curation. How do we curate meaning? That's what communication mastery comes down to. Commitment, I talked about that a little bit earlier this morning. Uh, yeah,
Yep.
the power of somebody, I'll just say it this way. Any yes that you get from somebody relative to an organizational change or something that you're trying to do, any yes, the solidity of that yes is based on their willingness and ability to say no to you. The, the value of a yes is inherently determined by people's willingness and ability to say no. So this goes into this domain of commitment. Are you signing on to this? Yes or no? And if people don't feel like they have an opportunity to say, hold on just a minute, you're not going to get a high quality yes. And if you don't have a high quality yes, you do not have commitment. Okay? And then the final piece here has to do with trust. All any organization is a collection of people in relationship. That's all any organization is. And to the degree the relationships are working well, you got a pretty good shot at being successful. Relationships working well is predicated on how much trust exists in that relational dynamic. Trust to be able to say no to you, trust to be able to handle the consequence of saying no. So there's, both sides of this that come into play here. Yeah, how do you curate trust? How do you retrieve it when it's been broken? Because it will get
Oh,
broken.
yeah.
Nobody's perfect. We stub our toes all the time. So, yeah, this is all around relational dynamics. Curating high quality relationships. So
Yeah.
this ACT model is the blueprint for how you go about achieving that leadership definition. Influencing in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. Here's the blueprint. Here's the roadmap for that. That's how we do it.
It's funny. There you go. I'm giving you
So,
fireworks. There's fireworks. But
so
when you think about it, it's funny because these are so one of the things that happens with Blaine and I as I'm listening to this and as we get it as we talk about these topics is we have an opportunity to go practically experience these with our clients. And one of the things that was on a call yesterday, particularly about the two final domains, commitment and trust, and the damage, what happens when that is broken. Trust, there's a law of physics and trust. It takes 5 to 7 interactions, and it takes to create trust, and it takes 3 to 6 months to recover trust once trust is broken. So there's dynamics that occur from us physiologically and psychologically when we're creating trust, and they have to be very intentional. So it's fascinating when we make a commitment, the very first boundary that shatters trust is lack of commitment, or a shattering of commitment, because it is a set of accountability that's made between us or that individual and us. And we watch it. One of the examples is in a meeting. When you leave a meeting, and as the leader, you've led your team, and everybody leaves the room, and you sit in the room all by yourself, and you've got your cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, and you're sitting there and you go, there's no way in hell they're going to get this done. It's just not going to happen. They said they're going to do it, but I have no idea. It means things are broken in this process. So what we want to do, we want to explore. So now we're going to do an exercise.
Exercise.
I'm going to put it in the chat. And there's a PDF in the chat, which is this worksheet. It's a little expanded on this worksheet, which makes it very hard to see. But it's an opportunity for us, and we'll take, what do you think, Blaine? 10 minutes? 5
Let's see.
minutes?
5 minutes. Yeah, let's do five. Well, first
Yeah.
thought, best thought. Yeah, just kind of first thought, best thought. Don't, overly analyze this.
Yeah, that's a series of questions. So in the domain of awareness, what just a series of questions, and there's a checkbox in there. You can check off the box, and you can interpret it how you want to check it off. If it's a strength, check it off if it's a muscle that you want to fortify. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. There's no such thing as that. It's either muscles we're building or not building. So when we go through this exercise, matter of fact, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can actually talk about this. Everybody's got and you have the PDF.
Yeah,
Everybody has that. Lane, you got it?
yeah, just double click on the PDF that's in the chat and it'll open up.
Yeah. And then we'll come back after this, and we'll kind of talk about kind of the discovery what you discovered going through this exercise. So I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to start some music, because we got to have music if we're going to do an exercise. Got to have music. So I'll start a timer. about a minute. Wait for it. I love this feature. Sorry, it's the geek in me. It's the engineer in me.
Ta-da!
Time's up. That
All right.
remaining, the remaining molecules of engineerhood in me. All right, hang on. Let me actually turn it off.
Victory lap. Yeah, that's right, Aaron.
We
Yeah.
seem to be. I don't know how we generate negative. The only flaw in it is it generates negative time. I don't know how we generate negative time, but I'd like to figure
Hey,
that part out.
time is an illusion.
Time is, yes, right. Time is an illusion.
It's
So
just reinforcing that.
yeah. So through this exercise, and this is just a quick exercise. What did you discover? What'd you find? Elaine, you're new, so I'm going to ask you first.
I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Some things that I think I am are strengths when I read the sentence under the domain and I take the moment and I look and I'm going, maybe not so much. Maybe that's something I need to work on.
Okay.
Other ones are easy, but some of them not so much.
Not so much. Yeah. Yeah. Notice what you're noticing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that
And the
moment of
question
time.
that you can ask with that, Elaine, is if I was to reinforce that, and it's not so much about separating out strengths and weaknesses or any of that other stuff, but if I was to reinforce that, if I was to attend to this in with greater awareness, what would be the likely outcome? So I kind of future cast on it. What would be the likely outcome if I was more effective at doing that? I may be already doing it, but if I was to leverage it, what might be the implications from a leadership perspective?
Yeah. How about you, Sam? What do you think?
I have similar thoughts where, yeah, there's a lot of openings for a lot of opportunity for um, improvement or further understanding. Where I thought, when you ask yourself the question, yeah, no, I think that these are areas that can be grown and developed. Yes.
Yeah. It's funny because I think one of the things that we as leaders, right, we have it is constant practice, right? We never leave apprenticehood. So it's that constant practice in the reassessment. We talked, and I love your conversation this morning, Sam, about transformation, right? Going through transformation recently. It's that constant practice around stepping back and having a tool in place to kind of say, let me just go back and do this again. Um, and Elaine, so on Friday, we're going to give you a 9-pound PDF with all these documents and all the slides and so and then a 30-day plan on how to apply all this stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff coming on Friday too. But good. I think this is a really, really powerful exercise because it's a hard leadership it's it's a difficult thing to master.
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to master.
Yeah, and it is a lifelong journey. I mean, yeah, the idea of being a better leader is something that a lot of people aspire to. What we're looking at doing here is also inviting you to consider, how do I be a different leader?
Right.
How do I be a different leader? Better is, like I said,
It's
wonderful idea. Better, but better will get me incremental improvement in things that I already am doing fairly well. So we get incremental, performance increase and incremental, profit increase. we're looking at how do we create a quantum jump, the possibility of a quantum jump where we pop to a whole different level of performance. That requires a different leadership, being a different leader.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna click go on yet another document for you. This is just a reference sheet for you to have that's in the chat. And this what this worksheet does is we talk about, so we're blessed because we're in a very short session together talking about multiple models and different with the leadership universe and four pillars of empowerment and ACCCT and all of these things, and there's more models as we go through the week, so there's more reference sheets, but it's an opportunity to kind of step back and say, when we think through kind of the components that we talk about with mindset and spirit inside of the leadership universe and the four pillars of empowerment, which is now what do we do with it and how do we act on it. Blaine and I created a worksheet that takes the model we just went through, the ACCCT model, and breaks it down so that in awareness, it talks about from a mindset, spiritual perspective, what is awareness when we're really talking about it in this model, and then where does it fall in the alignment. I'm not going to share my screen because you guys can all read it, but where does it fall in pillar alignment? It falls in growth and innovation. Awareness is the foundation for recognizing opportunities for fostering innovation. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of think about this beyond the conversation today as a referential model to go back and say, okay, so if I'm in this thing and I'm looking and I'm thinking about awareness, my awareness, notice what I'm noticing. What's the outcome? What do I do with that? And what are my opportunities to apply it? And that's in brief what this little worksheet is intended to,
Yeah,
to
and
give you some
the
tools.
ACCCT model, the ACT model, yeah, it'll address vision, strategy, and tactics. Yeah, it certainly will do that. It's
Yeah,
really embedded in an exploration of mindset.
yeah.
That's really where, when we're looking at the leadership universe, the ACT model is really embedded in that mindset area because it's the one that has the greatest leverage potential. And so, once again, kind of using, this document that we've put together, it gives you a sense of just how all of this actually kind of fits together. They're not two separate models. They're very much commingled models, but we separate them out in terms of conversation so we can look at, okay, where can I, what's the leverage point for me? Yeah. And we work with it from that point of view.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for today.
Well, we've got do we want to put them into a little breakout room here?
Do you want to do that?
Yeah,
We got time?
let's poll a group here. We got some time. You guys want to have a little conversation with each other?
Sure.
Okay,
Thumbs
let me
up?
gotta jump on another call. Okay. Well, we're small enough group here that we don't need to do the breakout. But if anybody's got a question or right now, we've got a couple minutes left on the clock.
Yeah.
What if you had a question, what would it be?
We'll be our own group.
Yeah, we'll be our own group right now.
We'll be our own group. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to call on Brian because I know you've been with us before, and every time you're with us, you learn, you bring things forward that we hadn't thought of and things that are in your mind too. So I'm interested in Brian. It's so much fun, these calls, by the way. So Brian's in Uganda, Toto-san's in Japan. This is a global conversation. So Brian, I'm going to call on you on what you think about this topic that we went through today.
For me, the greatest topic that has really been very powerful for me today is the idea of trust and aligning trust with the behavior, especially every time Blaine talks about his story of removing the bed and bringing it to the,
Yeah.
I figure out that we are making a lot of mistakes as leaders in trying so hard to fix things our way, and yet there's the right context of how things are supposed to be done.
Oh
So
my.
this keeps on reflecting on the fact that, okay, with this story in my current life, what am I doing different that should have been done better in order to be a good exemplary leader? So I don't rely on the story, but it keeps on coming back and saying, okay, in everything that I'm doing today, is there a position in my life that is making me put my bed in the kitchen? So to me, that was really very outstanding for today. So
Excellent.
thank you. Thank you so much.
That's good. I like and Armin's. I'm gonna beg forgiveness for being nearly 72. Of course, Blaine's older than I am, but
Go ahead and butcher my name. I've been called worse.
all right. So I want to make sure I'm calling you by the right first name.
Armand.
Yes, Armin.
Okay, Armand. Okay, so my memory didn't fail me. I'm looking and thinking, okay, so it's Armand, right? Okay, great.
You're
And
razor
thank
sharp.
All right, thanks, dude. I appreciate that very much. Um, but it's I like your comment around the impact of today's session is enhanced awareness, and it's that awareness is that's like pouring cement. That's the framework. Being aware enables the other process. When you're unaware, you can't get to the other steps.
Yep.
You can't get there, no matter how you try.
Yeah, it's like when work. Sometimes we get on our hamster wheel, or in our rut, uber focused. Uh, gotta do.
Yeah,
And awareness. Common that self-awareness and awareness of context and all of those different layers kind of gets left in the ditch behind me. So this is just pointing out the need to pause, be still for a little bit, notice, start with myself, start in inside out kind of concept, and just pause a bit. What's going on with me now? Where am I at here? Kind of take a drone flight up to a few thousand feet and get a higher altitude look at what am
There
I
you go.
what am I doing? Am I aligned?
yeah,
With these things we're talking about, et cetera. So thanks.
yeah. Very good point. Sam, any final thoughts from you for today? I know.
Yeah, I'm just going to build on those thoughts, and the analogy I come up with is it's about alignment. But if you can imagine magnets like dominoes, spaced,
Yeah.
and if you're not aligned, like one magnet moves, it'll influence all the other ones, and it may not be the direction that you want to go. And I think it's very important to align all those energies, um, uh, because one can influence all the others in a path that you may not want to go.
Yeah. That's good. I just put something in the chat, folks. You might want to just pick that up. The range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice that we fail to notice, there's little we can do to change until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. Just enhanced awareness. Yeah, just kind of coming back to that, noticing what we're noticing. The power there is phenomenal if we can actually leverage it effectively.
Yeah. Reminds me of our saying about how when we introduce ourselves, how we become experts, and the more we become to know, the more we know we don't know.
Yep.
So, anyway, well, cool.
Okay, we're at the top of the hour.
Thanks everybody for being here. Brian, good to see you. I'll see you tomorrow morning, Brian. Sam, Armin,
Thanks,
we
everybody.
got fireworks going on.
Got fireworks. Life is
Got
good
fireworks.
here. We're just dancing with gas here.
There we go. There's fireworks in there. All right, everybody. Have a great Toda-san. Have a great rest. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See you tomorrow.
Okay,
9 a.m. Same place, same station.
Same channel.